Hello! Welcome back to Naoto's Nerdy Power Hour. Today we are going to talk a little bit about what was the topic again, Nathan?
What makes a master knife sharpener?
What makes a master sharpener? What makes a good sharpener? Or at the master level. There are quite a few things I had to kind of think through about this topic, but the since I'm fortunate enough to meet lots of knife makers and sharpeners, I kind of have the idea of what makes a man a master sharpener. But before we get into it, we have a few announcements to make. I guess the first one, we are co-hosting events with the Embassy of Japan in Ottawa. We will basically talk about various cultural aspects of Japanese knives. How to choose knives, how the knife came about to be, and everything. They'll be aired on the. That's going to be a live event, either on Zoom or the Facebook. You can join us. We can probably put the link there, but that'll be on Friday. This Friday. From 5 p.m. at Mountain Time. And if you're somewhere else, say, Ottawa, that will be at 7 p.m. On Eastern Time. So we'll be doing the event together with the Embassy of Japan. That's kind of, exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
Also, I think we can announce it now that we're going to visit.
Oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, yeah, sure. So 2 years and a half of the pandemic, it had been so hard, so difficult to travel. Japan recently lifted the restriction on people who is triple vaxxed without any quarantining. So we decided to visit some of the friends that we made over 2 years and haven't really met in person, including this blacksmith Yoshizawa, Go Yoshizawa-san from Nigara Hamano, up in northern Aomori. I'm really excited. We did an event together. I mean, it's the interview together, right? So if you guys haven't watched it, it's on the YouTube. 3 young blacksmith interview with the Manaka-san, Miyazaki-san, and the Yoshizawa-san. But I've talked to him. I've seen him on the screen over the Zoom or the YouTube, but I haven't really met him in person. I'm very excited. There are a few hiccups, always like when you plan to travel, there's always a hiccup, right? Unfortunately, the earthquake happened. The huge magnitude 7.3 earthquake hit about the same spot as the 311 back in 2011.
Oh my God.
They kind of paralyzed the Shinkansen system, so we will have to take a different route to get to.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Whew.
They derailed the Shinkansen, and it's going to take until the April 20th to open up a whole line. So
yeah, so we're going just a couple weeks until you guys go to Japan.
Yeah, and we're hoping to get a lot of footages as well. We want to do some live events. It'll be fun, I think.
Yeah. Do we know yet who we might live stream with, or are we kind of playing it by ear?
We like a few people.
Yeah.
Haven't decided yet. It's just really, comes down to the scheduling and everything, because there's a time difference. And if you're gonna do the live stream, it's gonna be like relatively early in the morning in Japan, like 10 a.m.
Right.
And here is like 6-7 p.m. Right. So relatively, I want to do it in a relevant time for all of you, maybe watching from say North American time zones, like say Eastern and to Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
So relatively early in Japan, but hopefully we will see someone who's super cool and interesting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of cool stuff coming out of that. So yeah, stay tuned on the channel for both those live streams while the guys are in Japan, but also for the next few months, we'll have some videos coming out about some of the people we visit. And gonna go see Nigara, I think, and
Nigara-san,
Masashi-san.
Masashi-san, a few people in the that area, Sanjo, a few in Osaka.
Yeah.
So
I got a couple bits of news as well. One is just if anybody's interested in that webinar that we're doing with the Embassy of Japan and the Carleton University Japanese Association that's happening this coming Friday. There's a link in the description now that you can register at. Also, we are sharpening for Ukraine this week.
Oh, yeah.
So this week, 100% of sharpening proceeds from our stores go to World Central Kitchen. They are basically like food relief charity, and so they set up in disaster areas and feed people in need. But they don't just like dump a bunch of food there. They work with local chefs and kind of rebuild the food systems locally. So they're set up all along the border in a bunch of like in Spain and Poland. They're in some cities in Ukraine now, so it's they're doing some good work. So if you come get your knife sharpened this week, 100% of that money will go to World Central Kitchen, and then we're gonna Knifewear Foundation is gonna match up to $100,000 and give that to the Canadian Red Cross. Yeah.
So it's good time to get the knife sharpened and
Yeah, and as always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, if you haven't. Yeah.
If you haven't already, I'm sure everybody has, obviously.
Alrighty, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about what makes a master sharpener. I like to kind of stick with the topic. I myself won't call myself a master sharpener. Number one, what makes a master sharpener? People who would not say they are the master sharpener. That's really the important thing, I think.
Absolutely. Having a level of like humbleness.
Humbleness, yeah. Even if you meet any knife sharpeners in Japan, they wouldn't call themselves a master yet. They're really, really good. But they always seek for the improvements when they're doing the sharpening. So that's really the one big quality. Another thing that you have to be careful about is there are two different type of sharpeners, maybe 3 or 4. But when it comes to a kitchen knife sharpening, there are 2 different type of sharpeners. One is a manufacturing type of sharpeners who sharpens the blade from blank steel, well, basically forged steel, make it into a knife. There's another type of sharpeners that are resharpeners, people who sharpens after the knife has been used for a little while. I'm the resharpening guy. I do not manufacture knives. I do not have the heavy equipment that those master sharpeners do have, or the manufacturers have. We are the resharpeners, right? Where those manufacturers, sharpeners, or I love this terminology in Sekai, hatsukeshi. Hatsuke means ha is the blade, tsukeru is to put. So the put blade on that knife, basically, right? So when it's forged, there's no blade, there's no sides. So the hatsukeshi will put sharpens the whole bevel and the flat, back, and whole thing. So that's the kind of sharpeners that we often talk about. Say like Yamatsuka-san, say like Morihiro-san. Those people are sharpeners who do produce or make knives. For example, I actually forgot. Hey, Nathan, can you grab that knife that I'm working on? That knife that I'm working on?
Oh, that knife.
That I left there?
Yes.
That's actually a really good example. Where our standpoint, we are resharpeners. We sharpen the knife that's already become a knife, I guess. It has the edge, and as they use it for a little while, they need to be re-sharpened or regrind. This is a knife that's been forged by a blacksmith but has not been sharpened. I actually started it. So I pretend that I do something, like that, but I'm nowhere near, or I'm not that. But here is the example. It's all black because how it's forged, how it's quench heat treated, it will create the oxidized layer of black steel on the outside, and that's one of the reasons why those blacksmiths are called blacksmith. The steel becomes black. Anyways, so from here into sharpening the bevel, flat, the spine, and sometimes this choil part, that's the sharpener's job. What makes those sharpeners really good? I guess there's another type of sharpeners that's a little bit more
a third kind of sharpener,
but it's more resharpeners. But so what makes this knife sharpener, who makes manufactures the blade, versus a resharpener? What makes these guys good is that I think to lessen the gap between those who makes the blade and those who resharpens. What that means, it's really hard to kind of grasp the idea. What that means is that when those sharpeners manufactures the blade, the tools that they use is quite a bit different from the resharpeners use. Right. Sometimes they use the same machines. Sometimes those manufacturing guys do resharpen the knives as well. So but slightly different, right? What we use is slightly different from what we use is quite a bit different from the manufacturers use.
Right, because we use hand stones and like a rotary, like a horizontal wheel.
Yeah. So what those manufacturers use is this big vertical grinding stone. That's like about the size of myself, maybe.
Right.
Maybe 4 feet. Yeah. 4
right.
feet.
Yeah. Meter and a half diameter kind of thing.
4 feet. They say the Yonshaku? No, about the 4 feet in diameter, and that spins super, super fast. That grinds the steel really fast. But even though it's actually quite big in diameter, when you put that knife onto those stones that has the curve to it, what they do is they try to grind it like this way. They actually tried a few different angles to get the bevel as flat as possible.
Oh, interesting. So they're not getting like a concave necessarily.
But it's super, super hard to get it completely flat. So what the Maruyama-san, the sharpener at the Hado, had told me is that the way he's aiming for is to lessen the gap between the sharpening on these stones here and to sharpen them on those big wheels. Sharpening on those stones here, as long as you flatten them or you true them, it's always flat. But as I said, when I start sharpening, you can see that the spot that's not touched on the how's that?
Yeah, looks good.
So there are a few spots that's not touched on this flat stone. So you don't have to, and it is like such big hustle. Like if you're a manufacturer where you have to produce like, say, sharpen 30 to 50 knives a day, you can't make every single one of them flat. You can't. It's just can't. It's really hard, right?
Right.
Where the Resharpeners, they try to make this as flat as possible. Um, so the idea of Maruyama-san is to lessen the gap so that the sharpeners or users even don't have to spend as much time fixing the blade. And that mindset, I think, is really important, right? To lessen or close the gap between the wheel and the flatness. And some knife makers or sharpeners use different type of the tools, right? Some of them use the belt sanders to flatten them. Some of them use the super long, wet belt sanders that actually also polishes them.
So would you say it sounds like one of the things, like if we're tying it into today's topic, one of the things that makes a master knife sharpener is the mindset, the way they think about the process.
Yeah. Also, the end product, you always have to have the mind what the end product do, right? Type of edge, type of angle. And I know a lot of sharpeners in Japan, they sharpen the way that that it's been asked by the say wholesalers or retailers. Some as skillful as he or she could be, it's like trying to upsell the customers at the car like parts shop or something. They sometimes say, "Oh, I love doing the mirror polish because it's a great money."
Right. Okay. Like it brings in a higher price, basically.
It's like, "Oh yeah, I love doing the mirror polish because it's a money." Like,
right.
Oh,
so the big bucks are.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a bit about what you're sharpening today then for people that are just tuning in?
Yeah, I'm just like sharpening this Kitaoka-san's a Kiritsuke Yanagiba right here. It needed a little bit more straightening as well as the edge flattening, so I'm just going to sharpen full on the stones today. But the today's topic is like not entirely relevant, so I'm just gonna sharpen them and I talk.
Yeah, we didn't know exactly what to sharpen today while we're talking about master sharpeners. So
yeah, so
yeah,
I was gonna do is just to sit down and talk about it, but I thought it's nice to have some thing to look at.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really the one thing. Another thing is the you always want to also, like as I said earlier, you always want to improve yourself or your skills or speed, or think different way of sharpening. Think outside the box. There has been skills and lots of knowledge passed down from the by generations, but I think good sharpeners love to good to kind of doubt. It's not only just to follow the tradition. I do the sharpening this way because that's how it is.
Right.
I like those people who think, why is this way the traditional way? And often tradition is right. But you have to kind of grasp the idea and digest themselves so that they can do it by themselves instead of just blindly doing because it's something that they've been told.
Right. Because that's the way it is, kind of thing. Yeah.
And I think a lot younger, both blacksmith and sharpeners have that type of mindset these days, which is fantastic, I think. I'm not saying older ones don't. Some people don't, but a lot of people who we deal with, they have the very similar mindset. They're like, they do the way that they do because X and Y and Z. They do have an idea, So as a blacksmith, like when I ask, say, Tanaka-san, from Sakai, a question, say, why do you use the pine charcoals to quench? And he had an excellent reasoning behind that, right? Should I tell? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it's not secret.
It's not secret. The pine charcoals will prevent the decarbonation process. Some people say it will add the carbon back into the steel. Maybe, but not realistically. But the more that it retains and it prevents that carbon from leaving from the steel. So it kind of keeps its hardness. And also,
Gotcha.
how it heats up is also important as well. It's not instantaneous heat.
Okay.
It heats up gradually, and heats up to the point that the even gives a really nice even heat.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So when I went to actually see the way he quenches, he pulls the knife out a few times and see if that the knife is evenly colored. And
Right.
I think the pine charcoal makes it a little bit easier to attain that evenness.
Interesting.
That's my theory. What he told me is that the prevents the decarbonation.
Right.
Okay.
Sort of like using like a cast iron pan compared to like a really thin frying pan.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. So you don't have the one spot hotter than others.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it a little bit easier.
Smart.
The and he always used the oven for the tempering. The traditional way of tempering steel is after they quench, they put it back on the kiln or the forge and do this, and put the water and see if that evaporates like in a certain speed. And they're like,
Okay.
oh, that's good. But that's not usually super accurate. Well, they'll it's been pretty accurate, but he wanted to bring more scientific method to it.
Right. Yeah.
So he actually brought this oven. So after quench, he opened the oven, put the blade in, and leave them for a little while.
Cool.
He's so strategized, or he's so organized. So he does same thing every day. So he forges, and he finishes, and he quenches. That's the 3 steps that he does.
Cool.
Anyways, that's the kind of the mindset I think they need to have.
Right on. Well, should we throw a few questions in here that
Yay.
we can carry on? So Spoon Monkey had a question right at the beginning of the show. First of all, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Good to see everybody. It says, question for later: why do Moritaka, Takeda, etc. sharpen different to everyone else? Surely over the years, over hundreds of years, the perfect grind has been discovered. So why don't they all just sharpen the same way?
It's the way that they think of the blade as well. When I asked Takeda-san directly as well, why do you forge and sharpen the way you do? His answer was I never actually questions what I do, because that's something that they have been doing. But although the Takeda-san actually changed the way he forges
really?
over the years, because when you look at the knives that he forged back in 2020, like say 2010, maybe a little bit more, they go like 2000s.
Right.
Say the knife that's from that. Kevin has one, and the way that the knife is forged is so different. So what happens is that the way he forges the knife, his most respected blacksmith from this area, whom he respects is not the kitchen knife blacksmith, but the plain blacksmith from this place, Yoita in Niigata. So there are actually 3 different places in Niigata that's famous for blacksmithing. But Yoita is more of the carpentry tools, rather than the Sanjo that's more kitchen knives.
Okay, cool.
But what he's been told, or the blacksmith in Yoita told him, is that, you know what knife is the best? What's the best knife? And his answer was,
I couldn't answer that.
his answer was thin knives.
Right.
Makes sense, but depends on how you interpret that, right? Thin where? So he decided to forge the whole entire blade as thin as possible. His way of the forging is insane. So he forged the blade as thin as possible and puts the blade. His knife is fantastic to cut the meat, and also certain type of the veggies like potatoes and leafy veggies are great as well. But because of the thinness in the middle of the blade, that will achieve the fantastic blade that, like, no food is sticking on the blade, because it kind of it does have the big air pocket in the middle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So it's got really good food release then.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how he ended up. Another thing about Moritaka-san is also traditionally they are swordsmith before. And what's really important about swordsmithing to remember is that material for the sword making is so scarce, right? So you want to grind as little as possible.
I see. Right.
You want to make the pretty much of the good shape out of forging it,
Right.
so that it does actually have that nice taper. If you look at the before forging blade, Moritaka-san's blade has nice taper by forging it.
Yeah, totally.
Then he puts that little edge like that.
Interesting. So because it's not like when you make a pie and you can just take the scraps that you trim off and fold them back into the pie dough and reuse them. Interesting. Yeah.
Think about, if you have the flat sheet of steel that has to be ground down to the a knife, you have to grind a lot of steel off.
Yeah.
But if it's like Moritaka-san, Masashi-san does that too, and a lot of other blacksmiths who's been kind of, their tradition is to forge out the shape. Then that's how they get that blade.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Kind of, sort of, but not exactly like Manaka-san, where he forges the shape, but then he kind of counters it with the grind.
He can definitely do it, but
yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, keep the questions coming, folks. A few more here. DJ Sergioto was wondering if you know who the blacksmith behind Kobayashi knives are. Because I think we were talking about this last week with Lordy, but he was, I think, thinking about getting one.
The Kobayashi knife?
Yeah.
The Kobayashi knife, the blade itself is, it's not our terminology hand forged.
Okay.
Like it is a stamped out blade.
Oh, okay.
It's R2. Although R2 is such a controversial steel, lots of people say hand forging, like say it's a hammer, hammer forge. The R2 does not make the quality of steel better. A lot of people claim that. There are slight, maybe very subtle difference between the hand hammered or the spring hammered R2 versus like a lot of people do use this roll forge. So basically it's a big roller, put the thing in, and it's like a pasta machine. Here you go. That makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
They still do add the heat and pressure. What they don't add is the hammer forging, or this type of forging here. It's you can hit the certain spot, making that, say for example, a lot of people like to say distal taper. makes it a little bit easy. You can control it where it hits. Where roller forging often has the very same thickness throughout the blade.
Right.
But it's not the bad thing. Again, if it's properly heat treated, and when it's sharpened like the Kobayashi-san, it's a razor.
Yeah.
It's super, super thin.
Well, yeah, because the sharpener does, and I would say in a sense like an equivalent amount of work to the blacksmith. You can't really equate the two jobs, but like the sharpening job has just as much to do with the performance as the
Absolutely.
smithing does, right?
So yeah, it's fantastic blade. It's the edges, like the core steel is not ever overexposed. Sometimes like you see the overexposure on the blade that can cause the edge to damage a little bit easier. So yeah,
Okay.
fantastic blade.
Wilson W thought that he used Takamura-san blades, but apparently that's not the case.
What's that?
Wilson was under the impression that he was using blades from Takamura-san, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
The Takamura-san doesn't even have enough to sharpen, do it for themselves, right?
Right. It's the reason we can't get the Uchigumo knives from him.
Knives, yeah.
As much as we love them. Bernice is just asking, does the Ukraine fundraiser include sharpening at the Calgary Farmers Market? It does. If you're just tuning in and you missed it, this week, 100% of our sharpening proceeds from Knifewear will go to World Central Kitchen, who are currently set up all around Ukraine, feeding people, feeding refugees, essentially, as well as feeding people within the country. So yeah, bring your knives down. We'll take care of them and give 100% of that money to charity. The Knifewear Foundation will also match those donations and give them to the Canada Red Cross.
Yes.
Here's a great question from DHop310 on today's subject. Do master knife sharpeners use the synthetic stones, natural stones, or both?
Both. They should be able to use both. Master sharpeners, they have to be quite knowledgeable of what and find the best way to approach where they want to reach to, I guess. Not so much, so I kind of explained a little bit earlier, not so much manufacturing guys. They don't usually use natural stones unless they are specifically asked to make that certain finish. But not really. Most people who use these natural stones are those re-sharpeners.
Okay, people like us.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good to know.
So I guess like a couple questions, and I'm gonna move to what makes the great re-sharpeners. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know if there is any terminology that's like suited for that.
Well, I don't think we have any urgent. We've definitely got some questions, but they can wait. So what do you think makes the best re-sharpener, like secondary sharpener?
Right, the secondary sharpeners. So, the secondary sharpeners has to master. They have to have really good eyes to tell the condition of the knife. That's really the first thing, so that they can approach the way that they want. Right? You can't just grab a knife and blindly put that on the whatever angle that you're usually sharpening. You want to make sure and have the way to tell the condition of the knife itself. I'm not talking too much about the like how the steel is forged and stuff. I'm like talking really basics. If knife's straight, how's the profile? How's the bevel? Everything. And how's the back? How's the uraoshi, urasuki? And how
like doing a really thorough inspection on the knife, and then
has that knife been sharpened by someone else? If so, how? And inspect and be able to kind of see the route, how you can take the knife to the knife that you usually have your idea to where you want that knife to be. Also, good secondary, I guess, sharpeners should communicate and be able to communicate with the, if it's possible, to the client, I guess, who brings the knife to you or him or her, and communicate what they are using the knife for and what their expectation is, and the master sharpener should be able to meet with that. Right? Because everyone uses the knife differently. And master sharpener or super good secondary sharpeners should be able to communicate in a way that the owner of the knife understands comprehensively, I guess. The way you don't just want to talk about, okay, this is what it's like. It's not like yeah, so I'm gonna like this, the kitty hat this way. I'm gonna kiss me this, and I'm gonna
you want to kind of talk about what you're doing in terms they understand.
Yeah.
Like they shouldn't need to know a bunch of jargon.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a big thing for us is like setting up expectations for people. Like, we're gonna thin your knife. A lot of people don't even know what that means. So we kind of like walk through the process of like, this is the part of the knife we're gonna grind.
Yeah.
This is what it's gonna look like afterwards. Because yeah, I mean, pretty much no matter how good you are at sharpening, the knife is going to look different when a customer gets it back. And so it's pretty important, I think, to make that clear and kind of explain why that's a good thing, but that it will in fact look different when they get it back.
Yeah. So I think it's really important. Also, good sharpeners, even the resharpeners or the secondary sharpeners, they have to sharpen the way that makes it either the customer or that the owner of the knife or the him or herself sharpen easier afterwards as well.
Right.
It's just really the maintenance purpose. Knives like these, you spend good, couple $100 to all the way to couple grand. Even though like there are knives that's like couple grand, knives for a couple $100 is expensive.
Totally.
So you want that knife to last, and I believe that those knives should last for like very long time, fairly long time. The knife nerds like us, we usually have a little bit more collection than most people do, so we often rotate, which is not
helps your knives last longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Number one way to make your knives last longer is get more knives.
Exactly. So we kind of don't sharpen as often as some people do.
Yeah, I definitely put it off until like every knife in my house is dull.
Right. Well, I did the one the other day because that was my primarily wife's knife, and I was using it to cut. For those of you who might have seen my Instagram post, don't do it, but it was frozen sliced pork belly, very thinly, but like stack up maybe like 3 or 4.
Okay.
I gently put the blade on and apply gentle pressure so there's no slowing action, there's no
no twisting.
But you know what? I learned this hard way. Very cold cut of meat like this or anything like ice.
Yeah.
Temperature itself will make the knife brittle.
Right.
So tiny bit of force will chip the knife, and
it
did chip.
Because you said it was partially frozen. It wasn't even completely frozen.
It was frozen.
Oh, okay.
That was bad.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, talking about, I think we'll get into this a bit later with some of the questions, but talking about like being a secondary sharpener, whether you're sharpening customer knives or you're sharpening your own knife. Definitely what you said about making the future sharpening job easier. I agree with. I mean, for me, it was a tendency to just, because all my knives would go dull and then I'd have to sharpen all of them at once, I would just sharpen the edge and I'd do like a quick and easy sharpening because I had a bunch of knives to sharpen. But then I got to the point where suddenly my knives needed to be thinned and it was way more work to thin them out because I had been lazy and done that. So it definitely it's like that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you spend the time kind of thinning your knife more regularly, it'll be a lot less of a pain in the ass than doing a serious thinning.
Yeah. But also just not only just the thinning, how you thin it, like what. So that's whole thing, right?
Right.
Anyways, so that's what I think. Another thing is I think this is like my personal belief, but really good secondary sharpeners should be able to use knives and cook themselves so that they know what kind of edge that they need.
Right.
That's like my, and I have been, if I have been like in belief of this for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're making a tool, you should be able to use it, and like not professional level,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like I'm not saying they should work in a restaurant,
Right. Sure.
cutting up a whole bunch
But
of
they should spend some time cutting some veggies at home.
yeah.
I've got another good analogy for this one because I've had a lot of straight razor shaves,
Mhm.
both from myself and from professional barbers.
Mhm.
And the best straight razor shaves that I've had from barbers were from barbers that knew how to use a straight razor on themselves,
Mm-hmm.
face, legs, whatever,
Yep.
some part of their body. And the worst straight razor shaves I've had have been from barbers that have never used a straight razor on themselves because you don't know how it feels, right? Like you don't know what to feel for, and so you don't really understand like the right pressure and direction.
Exactly. That's like really my belief, and unfortunately, not many are doing, like, say for example, this is a great example. Shibata-san, the president of the Masakage as well as the master sharpener of the Kotetsu knives, he wasn't really big into cooking until he actually started sharpening, doing the sharpening business, as well as the more right now at the manufacturing business right now. He loves cooking. Now, if you look at his Instagram posts, and the president of like his employees, they're like, our president cooked this for us for lunch.
Oh, nice.
Right? And it's great. So he knows how that knife should feel
Right.
when he's sharpening.
Yeah. Well, and he can probably do tests too. You can try
Exactly.
sharpening a certain way and then actually use it and see if it works.
Exactly. So unfortunately, not all and not many, I have to say, sharpeners in Japan cooks. Not many.
Right.
It's just really traditionally, speaking.
Sure. Their spouse might do the cooking or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like there's a bit of philosophy, I would say, that especially when I hear you talk about knife sharpening, like it becomes philosophical almost at a certain point. But it's like the difference between somebody like having these ideas and putting them into action as opposed to just thinking about it.
Yeah.
If you just sharpen knives a certain way, but you don't ever use them on something, how do you know if it's gonna?
I'm sure, like they get a lot of feedback and stuff like that. So their point is legit as well. But
Sure.
I still think you should have your own standard of how the thing cut, or especially the kitchen knives that you're using on food, that's cutting the way that you want. And you can talk to your customer or whoever you're sharpening for, and like try to talk. So this is what I usually do, and this is like how this is my aim for the knife to cut. What would you like the knife to do?
Yeah.
How would you like the knife to cut? That kind of talk, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to some questions if that works for you. Okay, cool. Another good one from DJ Sergioto. So speaking of like secondary sharpening, Kasumi finish. When I use a Suihiro 5000, I get this beautiful misty dark Kasumi finish on ironclad knives.
Yeah.
But I see small white scratches from the same stone. What am I doing wrong? Is it the slurry, the pressure?
So if you want to make it's really maybe both. When you build a small slurry, you probably get a little bit more misty finish. If you make, so say for example, if you sharpen it under the running water, some people do. Don't worry, you can do that. A lot of people say, "Oh, you have to have the slurry on top." It's not always true. you could find your own way to sharpen them. But generally speaking, if you wash the old slurries away, you get much more fine, like shinier finish.
Okay.
And
Like
if
you keep the stone really clean. Okay.
So if you want to get a really, really super, super fine edge, you should do that.
Okay.
It kind of washes every piece of, the metal coming out from your knife, right? So it kind of keeps it really, really clean and shiny.
Interesting.
And I still get like tiny scratches from the previous stones and stuff. If you look at the say manufacturing guys, how they get a finish the kasumi is either use a sandblast, either use this so-called hongasumi, which is in Sakai is really popular. They set the knife down, and they have this piece of metal that goes along the shinogi line, and they use this tool and with the kongosha and do this.
Right.
So they don't even do everything by hand, right? Some guys, some resharpeners do or secondary sharpeners do everything by hand. It's up to you. It's softer the stone, you get a little bit nicer kasumi. So if you want to get that, bit softer stone, do that. I don't know which series of Suehiro you're talking about. The Suehiro has quite a bit of series. I think Komyo is really hard, so you shouldn't be using that for kasumi finish. Or Gokumyo, I think.
Okay.
But I haven't used all of them.
Right.
So I can't really.
Yeah, if you let us know which Suehiro you're using, we might be able to give you some more tips. D-Hop 310 has another good one about secondary sharpening. What are the keys to resharpening a concave wide bevel? Maybe, I'm guessing, like a Masakage knife would be a good example, like a Koishi. Does it always need to be thinned?
Few things. They don't need always thinning. I do use sometimes my own discretion if the knife is too thin, because if that bevel is concaved, sometimes the thinnest point is not the edge.
Right.
Like it can actually cave in a little bit and come back like this.
Oh, interesting.
It's a tiny bit, right?
Huh.
That's one of the reasons why when you put that concave edge on a stone, there are quite a big spot that's not touching on your knife. Few things. I'd asked the same question to the Masashi Fujiwara-san when I went to actually did a little bit of training with him. His answer was that the one usually on discretion. Me, I don't always thin them.
Right.
When I do, I try to make it prettier. What the Masashi Fujiwara-san was saying is that you don't really have to make it pretty because it's just and the way that I often do is to find a stone like finger stone or small stone to match the concavity so that it touches whole way. Makes it look more even, but you are exacerbating the concavity as well by doing that.
Yeah, right.
Right? So it's not going to help much in terms of if you don't like the concavity on the knife, that will not help at all because you are grinding the steel off. Right?
Yeah.
So if you don't care about the look of your knife, I would usually suggest to thin it, but don't worry too much about the cavity because as you sharpen them more and more, it will reach to the point.
Yeah, I thinned out my Masakage knives a couple of times each, and it disappeared pretty quickly. Yeah.
So.
Right. But if you want to maintain it to some extent, you could use finger stones.
Yeah, you could. Not recommended.
Right. And you could get away with thinning your knife every second sharpening if you didn't want to thin it every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I usually do. one of the reasons why we do, I personally use that little finger stones is that the equipment that we use is quite a bit more aggressive than the lots of folks at home who just uses those stones. So it kind of leaves deeper scratches that looks really not pleasant.
Right.
But if you're again using it just those stones at home, you can just leave it until it reaches eventually.
Cool.
Hopefully hopefully that answered the question.
Sweet. Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah. Again, keep the questions coming, folks. If you got more, pop them in the comments. Spoon Monkey is asking, who, in your opinion, makes and sharpens the best R2 knives?
My favorite R2, Takamura is my favorite right now.
Yeah.
The way that it's been thin and sharpened.
Yeah.
But the Takamura-san makes really good, like the way he sharpens, like good. His VG10 is crazy.
So
and his Chromax is crazy too.
Alex25 was actually asking about how he sharpens his knives. Are you able to elaborate on that at all?
He uses the two different methods. He uses, and no one really knows. Like even like when I ask Shibata-san, he doesn't really know exactly how he does. But he does two different steps. He sharpens on those big wheel first to make the shape, like rough shape.
Yeah.
Then he actually puts down onto the machine to actually re-bevel it.
Okay.
But the way he set up, and also the initial sharpening makes that it's really nice and thin, but not too thin. He's got a really great balance in between that thickness and everything. So like when you're cutting carrots with that any Takamura knife is just a dream. It's crazy.
Yeah, it glides through like thicker, denser stuff really nicely.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, I got a two-part question here from Kyle Kersinger, also about sharpening. First off, can you explain the difference between Naniwa and Shapton stones? That's a pretty big one.
It's different company uses different method of creating sharpening stones. Generally speaking, the Shapton makes 3 different types of stones. Naniwa makes so many different. Naniwa also makes some of the abrasives as well. Big difference. You can't really say this company makes this certain method, because even in Naniwa, the Superstone series, Professional Stone series, and Traditional Stones are made differently. What it has in common for the Shapton is all of the Shapton stones are made this way, the magnesium bond style. So it's more like a cement, chemical reaction to cement. They made their stones so that it's actually more stable, chemically stable than some of the magnesia-based stones that we have seen from Naniwa. Because sometimes, like I've seen the batches of Naniwa stones that you shouldn't leave in water, but if it actually happens to get left in a bucket of water, it saturates a lot of water, and when they dry, because it expands and contracts, right? The contraction causes that stone to crack. And I've seen a few from Naniwa. Certain stones, but I haven't seen much from Shapton. So they made it a little bit better in terms of the stability, I guess.
Right.
But again, the Naniwa traditional series are made with the ceramic type of the vitrified. It's like clay type of stuff. So they're chemically they are stable.
Right.
Like this Hibiki series that we are trying to bring in, maybe sometime in May, or also vitrified. It's much more stable as well. So that's
okay. Cool.
Can't really do
Yeah,
the
because
company to company comparison.
there's different. Each has different series.
Yeah.
And we carry one from Shapton and a couple from Nanawa. If you were to recommend one over the other, is there a specific series between any of the Nanawas or any of the Shaptons that you'd recommend for a beginner sharpener?
For Naniwa, like they're how they after I think they restructure the whole the models for international market. They have like traditional, professional, and superstone series.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who's just getting into sharpening, traditional series is gonna do really, really well. The Pro series cuts fast, but it's a little bit too hard of the stone that I find.
Okay.
And the Shapton Glass series is fantastic, like the ones we have.
Yeah, we use them a lot.
Yeah.
In store and stuff, right?
And like we haven't put the skater video yet, right?
No, not yet.
But for those of you who watched our Sharp Knives Rock, was it last episode? Yeah, it was.
Yep. Yeah, beginning of March.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah. If you watched that episode, we did have a guest from the Team Canada speed skater from Team Canada, and he actually came to show us how to sharpen his blades. And the technician of the Team Canada, he loves that Shapton stone to sharpen the speed skate blades, and there's reason why. And it was very interesting. We are putting out we're editing down the video as well to have just a interview with Colton.
Hayden Mayer.
Yeah. Sorry, Hayden, if you're watching it. But it'd be fun video to actually watch as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. James Wang had a question. He recently got a knife from Miyazaki-san, Unryu style twisted Damascus knife. Feels just like first impressions that the forging is fantastic. Not as big a fan of the fit and finish. Is there does he have a specific process or a certain way that he likes to finish his knives? Does he like that more like kind of maybe rustic finish?
I think that the way he learned from the Oba-san is very rustic. His master is Oba-san from the in Fukuoka, and his favorite steel was Kigami, or the yellow carbon steel. And the way he makes the blade, the Oba-san was basically making a blade that's easy to take care of, easy to sharpen, won't chip. Where Miyazaki-san took it from there, and as the young blacksmith and likes to try new things, he started to use something different, right? Like Aogami Super. I think that one, James, the one that you have is the Aogami Super Core, isn't it? I think.
The Unryu. Yeah, that's a good question.
It's the Unryu style. Yeah. So we will have those two. I was gonna actually go to see Miyazaki-san, but he lives on this island called the Fukuejima in Nagasaki Prefecture. And the way to get there is either ferry ride from Nagasaki port, 2.5 hours. No, it's more. No, 2.5 hours ride from Nagasaki, or the 10-hour ferry ride from Fukuoka, or take airplane from Fukuoka or Nagasaki, and that takes like super long. So,
oh wow,
it's next time.
Yeah,
but it's just really the rustic finish is how he's been he's been taught making, and he's been talking to a lot of different blacksmiths, right? Like as you probably watch our interview with the Miyazaki-san, he's traveled a few times to see those knife makers in different areas like Niigata and stuff.
Right.
And he's got a lot of advice from those people. But
well, James confirmed that it is Aogami Super.
Yeah.
That knife. Cool. Got time for a few more questions? Yeah. Awesome. So Owl Woodworks said, I've taken the sharpening class here in Edmonton. Other than lots of practice, do you have any recommendations on ways to further my sharpening education? Do you guys have any other classes?
If I don't know if the any stores are planning on doing that, the advanced sharpening classes. We did try a few times pre-pandemic.
Yeah, pre-pandemic we would do that kind of like once a month, at least in Calgary.
Yeah.
Al Woodworks, if you talk to Adam or Chris probably, and you say, hey, are you guys doing any advanced sharpening classes soon? Just, I don't know, keep bugging them about it. And I mean, generally it's a 4-person class. So if you know some other people that want to take it, that in that class, we would teach like the thinning process basically, which is a little more time consuming and a little more advanced from the skills you learned in the basic class, but it's definitely kind of like the next step. Any other ways to further the sharpening education? I guess watch our sharpening technique playlist with Naoto.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. The always like I like to always have this mind, what could this knife do better?
Right.
And think about like when you're using it, it's sharp, but you know, like when you cut certain food, do they cut the same? Do they give you the same feedback? And you know, questioning is the great learning tool. I think questioning what you're doing right now, and if the knife is cutting smooth, cutting say potatoes the same way, those kind of stuffs can be very very good, I think.
Yeah. Figure out what you want that knife to do, and then think about the best way to sharpen it.
And it's hard.
Obviously, tune into the show every month.
Yeah.
You'll learn a lot that way. Oh, good question from E30 Birdie. I've been pushing off thinning my Shiro Kamo Aogami Super as it is a hollow grind. Any tips about how to go about it? Will it push up the shinogi line when I'm thinning it?
It can. There's always the way I try to teach when you're thinning is that not only just press the equal pressure along the shinogi, I usually break it into like 2 or 3, like one that's really close to the edge, one's tiny bit over in the middle, and the shinogi line. And if you don't want to save if you don't want to kind of bring the shinogi line up, you can always have that little bit closer to the tip part and tiny bit like second. One of the things to remember is that the Japanese knives are made with hard steel and soft steel. Softer steel will be ground faster than hard steel. Right?
Right.
So if you are adding the pressure to that, say, shinogi line a lot, you are grinding the shinogi much faster than the edge, the core steel.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
So you are actually steeping up your angles and stuff. So just be careful.
So you want to generally probably keep your pressure more towards the edge.
And concavity, again, as I mentioned earlier, it is really hard topic. Again, as I said, the best master sharpeners always think and have that in mind, how to lessen or how to close the gap between using those wheel stones as well as those flat stones. Wheel stones will definitely give a concavity if you're not careful. It's super easy.
Yeah, totally.
And gives a concavity.
Yeah, happens like instantly, probably.
Yeah. So so that happens. Even the master sharpeners, even if you spend $2,000 on the knife, there will be a low spots if the knife is not hand sharpened after.
Right.
Like no matter, like say, for example, like people like Mazaki-san and the Hinora-san, you will not see any low spots. Because the way that they finish is that they actually put the stone out and they sharpen them.
Right.
And so there's no low spots.
Okay, cool.
But there will be. So, as I said, if you want to hide it, there are several ways. Either you can use the finger stones to get the concavity. But finger stones, using the finger stones on the low spots on the bevel will again exacerbate, make it worse, because you are taking at the low spots even deeper.
Yeah.
Right?
Gotcha.
So if you're just doing for yourself, leave it until it reaches to the point that there's no concavity.
Right.
So that's my answer, I think.
Well, that's a good segue because you were talking about Hinora-san, and Spoon Monkey was wondering if you know what stones Hinora-san uses.
I don't know exactly what stone he uses.
Okay.
He finished everything by hand, especially like bevels and stuff. I could ask.
Well, here's something you probably could answer.
Yep.
Spoon Monkey also says, I've heard he does everything on stones and not wheels.
He does use wheel.
Okay.
First.
But he finishes on stones.
Exactly.
Which is why, yeah.
Exactly. So if you're gonna grind this piece of steel, like still has the about 2 millimeter thick.
Yeah.
But everything by hand, it's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, you'd have to charge like $5,000 per knife.
Yeah. And there's no point doing that. So they do use the heavy equipment like big wheel or the bell sander. But the way he differentiates, especially the Unryu or the Ryusui Tobimo on the river jump, is that he finished the bevel by hand using various different stones. So yeah, cool. He does use the wheel. He doesn't finish with just the machines.
Okay, cool.
For those of you who joined slightly later, maybe and might have missed the slight bit of announcements. Pandemic restriction to enter Japan has eased, especially from coming from Canada, who are triple vaxxed. I mean, you could, and I could have gone back to Japan by myself, but I had to quarantine in a couple of days at least. That's been lifted, so we're going. And we're going to see those people like Yoshizawa-san from Nigara, Hinora-san in Sanjo, Masashi-san in Sanjo, maybe Mutsumi Hinora, Wakui, those people. In Sakai, we're going to see Tanaka-san, Nakagawa-san, Tatsumi-san, the handle maker, Doi-san, Yamatsuka-san, and who else? Who did I forget? And Maruyama-san from Hado. So, a lot of people we are going to see. Stay tuned. We may do some live broadcasting from Japan with them, live.
Sweet.
Hey, we're
awesome.
Live in Japan.
Live. It's Saturday night. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So
that's
stay
awesome.
tuned and see what we're gonna bring.
Yeah. Well, some of it will be a little bit last minute notice. But if you obviously are on our mailing list and follow us on social media, we'll be announcing it there. We'll post up events on YouTube, and if you hit the bell button on YouTube, somebody asked me today, how do I get a notification when you have a live show? And if you hit the bell icon on YouTube, it'll send you a notification on your phone. Well, I got several more questions here. Lots of good ones today. Shinuki23 said, I noticed that most knives today are finished by sandblasting. Which knife maker that Knifewear carries still finish their knives on the stone, as far as like the bevel finish?
Manufacturing wise, the Matsuzaki and Hinora.
Okay.
That's it.
Cool.
That's it.
Easy.
Hinora-san, and we'll see some. We'll have some Hinora coming in
for the garage sale, or before that.
Maybe.
Okay.
I know the river jump.
It's a secret. Don't tell anybody.
Don't tell. But those are finished by hand. Mazaki-san does finish by hand. That's why Mazaki's knives, you can see that little vertical, not a horizontal, not a vertical. It's the diagonal, like minor scratches. Because he does it. He does this way.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah. Right. In line with the stone. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. Another good one from Spoon Monkey. He's got all the hits today. On average, what grit do knives leave the blacksmith or factory with? I think a lot more than you think are just around 1,000 grit.
For those who I don't know everyone, right? So I can answer a few of the ones that we know. Right. For example, Masashi-san finishes his knives at 3,000 vertical or the horizontal wheel. So that gives you about 4,000, 5,000 equivalent type smoothness.
Okay.
So that's who is it? The Takamura-san, 2,000 to 3,000 wheel.
Yeah.
So most blacksmith finishes around that range.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like Shibata-san finishes a one side finer, like 5,000 to 8,000, and the other side slightly coarser, like 5,000 to 1,200.
Okay. Right.
I can't tell the exact combination because he told me not to.
It's like the nuclear codes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He used to do 800 and 8,000.
Right.
He doesn't do that anymore, and I've seen how he does 2 years ago. So he may have changed it.
Right. Okay.
So.
Very cool. We used to get this question a lot on the show, which was basically like, I got my knife, a new knife from so and so. It's sharp, but it's not as mind-blowingly sharp as I'd expect. Why is that? And more often than not, it's just because the blacksmith or the sharpener is sharpening for a more general end user, right? Isn't that the case? Like more like average home cook kind of sharpening. And so a lot of as we say, knife nerds, like people who are really passionate about Japanese knives and really love that crazy level of sharpness, tend to tune it up a bit just because it's more of like a slightly rugged home application kind of edge, right?
Often too, though, if you look at the knives from certain region of Japan, traditionally they do not finish their knives to the out-of-box sharp. Just be careful. Some of the regions in Japan, they make knives and they sharpen knives, having that the customer will touch up before they use in mind.
Right.
So they often do not have the really good edge to start with.
Oh, interesting. And that's just a cultural difference in certain areas, or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, there you go.
We try to ask them to put the actually okay edge though.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's
yeah, it can make a lot of work.
Yeah.
Sorry, just finding the next question here. Trey Garner was asking, how can I get the residual slurry out of my Shapton glass stones? I always rinse them and rub them with my hands underwater, but I still have black slurry marks on the stone.
You may want to true it. Truing your stone is always key, right? If you haven't true it and if you true it and see those, you could use some so-called the Nagura stones. But generally speaking, when you true, especially or flatten with, especially like those diamond tools that's always flat, those black spots should be removed.
Right.
When you're flattening it.
Right. Yeah.
Like for example,
so, truing stone or Nagura is the best way to get rid of it.
For example, like this here. This 3,000 stone that I was using. If you want to zoom in that there, or can...
Oh, there we go. People should be here. I'll zoom in a little here.
You see that the marks here?
There we go.
You see the marks here? And do this. You still see the little brown spots here? That means it's not the true. It's not entirely flat. pretty good, maybe.
Oh yeah, much cleaner.
Yeah. So do it until you don't see any of the marks. If that makes sense for you.
Yeah. Hopefully that's clear. Cool. Well, thanks for your question, Trey. Well, E30 Birdie, this isn't even a question, but you might be able to offer some advice here.
Yeah.
Says, I really want to get into Japanese natural stones,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm scared of the rabbit hole. Fair enough. Very understandable.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where one should start. Any advice?
I think before you get into that, like looking at that rabbit hole, think about what you are hoping to do with the natural stone, whether you're looking to get really smooth edge or a certain type of finish that you are looking for. Think that first, because the different stones, different hardness, different mountains, mines, they all have different characteristics. And determining what you want to do with those stones and what type of things that you want to achieve is the first thing, because there is no one multi-purpose stone,
Right.
especially
they're all very purpose-built, right?
Exactly. So yeah, so think about that. Then do the little bit of research. Oh, I want to sharpen this knife. Say, for example, if you were to sharpen a straight razor as smooth as possible to finish, I would probably get the stone from Ozuku. That's pretty hard. Or if you could get it Nakayama, that's great, but I think it's pretty expensive. Get the Ozuku stone. It's called the type called Awasedo. That's like finishing stone, and go from there. And you can probably get a few different Naguras to get a little different like progression. Or what you could do is if you want to do a really nice finishing kasumi finish on them, think about some like uchigumori, ohira uchigumori, or the shiki uchigumori from the suita from Maroyama and those places. So it's like just see where you want to go,
right,
and think about it. Then choose the one that you.
Yeah, and to start off small, get one or two stones and go from there. We were talking earlier about thinning knives with a concave bevel, and Spoon Monkey kind of had just a thought and a question. Surely don't all knives eventually become flat ground?
No, they don't have to. As I said, the way in which I sharpen the bevel, I do it by 2 or 3 different spots, right? By doing so, I'm making the bevel ever slightly convex. Ever slightly. Flat bevel is flat bevel is not ideal because it will have very good suction power. Well, suction power is like
right.
Vacuum, but because it's so flat, there's no the food doesn't fall off as easy. Tiny bit of convexity is the best edge. That's what I would aim for. So sharpen very, very, very edge, and probably 2-3 millimeters up and closer to the shinogi. That 3 will do a really good job.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, just a few more here, I think.
Yeah.
Philip Ortman was asking, do you have any familiarity with Moto Kyoichi out of Shimabara?
Yeah, we do have one line from the Moto Kyoichi, which is I have to double check on the name, Hatsukokoro either Kurosagi. His knives, I've seen him, and I've actually touched one or a few of his knives, fortunately, the other day for the first time. It's good. It's like It's rugged. It's nice and thick. It's good for, I think, for the money. I think it's called Kurosagi.
Like good value for your dollar.
Yeah, it's good value. Well made. The way I love the way in which that he grinds the steel before he heat treats it. He does a treatment so that it doesn't crack as easy. So-called the quenching crack. He treats the steel in a way that it prevents or prevents from happening, and that's one of the reasons why I first contacted them, saying we wanted to we're interested.
Yeah.
We were getting there as the Hatsukokoro line though, but yeah, we do have those, and yeah, the way he is doing it's pretty interesting. He's like forging some Agami Super. He's forging some steels like Ginsan and other stuff. So
cool, awesome. Machu is asking, how long should it take to sharpen a knife after you've done around 10 knives if you're a beginner?
If you're just like sharpening a bevel, or the micro bevel, like last bit of the edge, it shouldn't take that long. But the if you were to do whole re-beveling and stuff, probably depends on how. So my answer is like 2 minutes to an hour.
Right. Depending on the knife and how dull it is.
Even if you get really used to sharpening, like me, I've sharpened quite a few knives, but some, like I still take some of the knives like an hour to sharpen, because I do take a little bit more time, and some knives I do in like very short period of time.
If you're just sharpening like a Western chef's knife,
well, yeah,
it might be like 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I would say, speed shouldn't really factor into it. Obviously, if you're doing it professionally and getting paid for it, you should learn to speed up. But if you're just doing it at home, focus on doing a really good job, and then go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, got a few more questions here before we go for the day. If anybody's got any more, feel free to pop them in the comments. Alex25 was asking, what is so bad about a slight concave grind? Is it food release? Is it the looks after thinning?
It's the it will release the food. So it's almost more like a it's not really bad, but it doesn't thin as well properly first. And it gets sometimes though, especially the concavity makes it, if it's like purposely built, some actually knife makers in North America I've seen, they have really big concavity in the middle of the blades for the food release.
Right.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
If it's made for that.
Right.
But if it's not made for it and it's there, it will just become it becomes a deterrent to being able to sharpen it properly.
Yeah, I think people are just intimidated to thin it because it won't look as good the first time.
That's basically it. It cuts well.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, it cuts well, and just like it takes a little while to get the cavity out.
Right.
And it again, as I said, it happens. It happens because the tools that they use.
Right.
And nothing wrong with it. It just it's really hard to make it even. The look wise.
Yeah, totally. Alex was also wondering what we think of Mutsumi Hinora. Are his skills up there with his father?
Mutchan, I've seen his knives. We've carried his knives like time to time and seen his knives. His knives has become really, really well. I'm not quite sure if he's trying to do the same as his father does. Like, I'm sure, like, I don't think they need to look at the same direction when two like different generational blacksmiths working.
Yeah, he's not looking to replicate his father's style necessarily.
Exactly, right? And I'm sure he can, but the Not sure if that's what he is aiming for.
Gotcha.
That is another question that I would like to ask.
Right.
Um,
Are we? I can't remember. Did you say we're going to see him when you're in Japan?
Hinoura's.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, I'm going to see Hinoura's.
That's awesome.
So yeah, haven't seen his new sharpening factory or the workshop. So
Oh, that's exciting. Shinuki 23 was wondering, is there any difference in performance between a thin secondary bevel and a wider secondary bevel? So if you have the same primary bevel, I'm guessing they mean, like if you sharpen differently on the secondary bevel, is that going to make much of a difference?
The Koba, it does make it. Well, the difference that it makes is that the the angle definitely makes it if you sharpen the Koba quite higher, it will make the edge much more stronger. And that's what a lot of people do. You could do secondary and tertiary bevel as well. I've seen someone do tertiary.
Right.
So what you could do is that say, this is primary, right?
Yeah.
Secondary, you can put it like something like this, 15, and tertiary as the very high few strokes like this.
Right.
You could do that as well.
But you really just want to do.
But
like
it doesn't
a couple
make
of strokes.
that much of the difference when it comes to the sharpness. It's not so much. Not so much. It does a little bit.
Right.
But so I change the angle. Generally, I sharpen them at the about 15 on both sides to make it 30 for those like knives that came in for big chips. I give it about 20. And sometimes like I do tertiary bevel, so like 15 or sometimes like 8 degrees edge and tertiary few strokes to kind of stop it from breaking. It's like a piece of fabric, I guess. Like sometimes you have the if you rip the jeans, you start to see the strings coming out.
Yeah.
You just
like hem.
Sew it. Yeah, hem it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay. Last one for today. Spoon Monkey is asking, as a resharpener at Knifewear, if Kevin took away all but one sharpening stone, and you had to use that for everything, what sharpening stone would you want to be left with?
Oh.
Has to be pretty rough, I guess.
I always recommend, if someone's looking to get one stone, I always do recommend a 1,000 stone.
Right.
So I guess that's what I go for. Knifewear 1,000 is great. Hibiki 1000, I'm starting to like it a little bit more because it's harder. But Knifewear 1000.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think I'd want a Chosera 400. Because it's still like a smooth enough edge.
Right.
But if you have to do a lot of thinning, it would be less of a pain in the ass.
Right.
Oh, okay. One last question.
Yeah.
Alex snuck into the very end here. At Naoto, when doing a micro bevel, how long should you spend creating it? Just a few strokes, like stropping at a higher angle, or really sharpen it again at a higher angle?
You shouldn't, after you thin it, you shouldn't have to spend that much of time. I do still raise the burr. When I actually finish sharpening and thinning and polishing the bevel, I do bring it back to, say, 1,000 grit and do a few strokes. I do make sure I have a burr, do the backside. So you shouldn't spend that much of time, but enough to raise the burr.
Yeah.
Then I do polishing for a little bit more. But yes.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, we got one vote for Nanowatt Pro 800 as the one stone, and James agrees. Chosera or professional 400 from Nanowatt.
400 is great.
Yeah.
Again, announcements. We're doing sharpening for Ukraine. All the stores, including the Calgary Farmers Market, bring your knives in. We'll donate 100% to the
World Central Kitchen.
World Central Kitchen. And Knifewear Foundation is going to match donation, and that donation will go to the Red Cross. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Also, what's the date today?
Today's the 22nd of March.
22nd of March. So next episode of Sharp Knives Rock is going to be April 4th.
Yes, correct.
It's the are we telling what we're?
Yeah, it's Sharp Knives Rock number 10, and it's the kids episode.
Yes, it's the kids episode.
Believe it or not. Yeah,
And-
it's gonna be at 3 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yeah, and we're giving away some things as well.
Yeah, we're giving away. Actually, I can pop a photo of it up on screen. It's
Yeah.
not a secret. We're gonna
Okay, there you
announce
go.
it soon. But yeah, we're giving away basically like a kids kitchen kit,
Mhm.
like your first knife set kind of thing.
Yeah.
With the idea of like, you know, if you're gonna teach your kid how to cook, these are some of the things that they could get started with.
Yeah.
There's a little cute yellow chef's apron from Medium Rare. A couple of knives, a Tojiro Child Santoku and a Kun paring knife. Some funky stickers, and a little lightweight mini cutting board, and a Kun peeler.
Yep. So
Yeah. So tune in April 4th, 3 p.m. Mountain Time, or catch it afterwards.
yep.
But yeah, it should be a good episode. We got some fun surprises for that one.
We have a special guest on that one.
We do have a
Yeah.
very special
Yeah,
guest.
it's a very special guest.
Awesome. Well, thanks for
All
tuning
right,
in, everybody.
thanks for watching.
Yeah. Hope. I imagine your daughter would love it, E30 Birdie. By all means, tune in and you'll have a chance to enter the giveaway. Matthew said, when are we opening a store in Ontario? We have a store in Ontario. We have a store in Ottawa, 800 Bank Street, open 7 days a week. We'll be opening in Toronto next year. But we also ship free in Canada over $100.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone. Hope you have a great week.
Ciao.